So we'll start this off. We'll open questions up for pretty much anything at the end. So I thought this question would be relevant to the class because I noticed it got mentioned a couple of times. People kept talking about like content and the importance for artists to like make like content for themselves. I also want to apologize in advance because a lot of the cultural references in this presentation are like 2 years late because the majority of this was made the majority of this presentation was like written up like 2 years ago. But yeah, so I think it's vital for us to kind of distinguish what content is, specifically because we claim to be making art, and there appears to be a crossover between what art and content is, while there also appears to be at an instinctual level, these things would be like two different things. Or is it? So a couple of years ago, I was talking to my friend on the phone. We went to high school together, and I was asking him what his plans were after he went to college. So he was like a journalism major. And he responded to me something like this. He was like, well, you know, journalism's practically dead, and I've worked in it for a bit. I'm not quite sure if it's my thing. I think I've realized that I'm really passionate about making content. So what is content? Saying you're an artist in the 21st century makes you sound like you're an arrogant asshole sometimes, like your old oats. People who are artists have been severed from the world at large and can only participate publicly in and through the funhouse mirror we call the art world. Artists belong in textbooks, museums, you're just some guy following Instagram. The new modes, the amorphous creative, or specifically the content creator, or as SAIC would have you, the maker, whatever that is. So there's something insightful in Wikipedia's definition of content creation. Here's that. In which it links audience with end user. So the word end user is traditionally used in the context of software development and data management, but this also implies an inevitability. Who is going to end up using this? How do we develop this thing for them? How do we make it as easy as possible and intuitive to use as possible? Audience, on the other hand, implies a choice, that someone is a member of an audience means they chose to be a part of it. QuickBooks doesn't have an audience, though. There isn't a QuickBooks fandom. End user implies the ability to optimize. What's more, content lives on platforms which seem to have both audiences and markets and end users. Once these audiences have been ensnared, however, an effective platform is presumably built to feed as much content and advertisements, if those things are two different things, to the content end user as possible. And to maintain this, that content will ideally be designed to be as digestible as possible. People can watch 30 minutes straight of different iterations of the same meme on TikTok because it requires little to no emotional or intellectual investment on the user end. It doesn't even require them to click a button due to autoplay. Perhaps too, the content creation is a result of the demand for the modern social individual, especially the creative, to be like Johannes Factorum, collecting data on the consumption of their own output. This self-surveillance emphasizes the possibility or the belief in the possibility for content to be optimized. The learn to code meme has become embodied in the content creator. And what's the content they're creating? Oh, yeah.
Love his town, I love his family, but now I think I speak for all of us when I say,
welcome back to Screen Rant. It's pretty safe to say that almost everyone in the animated cast of Family Guy should have been put in jail at one point or another, but no one may have committed more crimes than Peter Griffin himself.
So there's something insightful in Noah. Returning to the Wikipedia definition, it defines content creation less as a creation of media, but as the contribution of information to media. It does seem that to a large extent, content's just an info stream designed for the sole purpose to be consumed and then likely forgotten. Take the very unusual case of 5-minute craft YouTube videos, 5-minute food craft videos. So many of these crafts either cannot be made or would turn out terrible if they were made. But it'd be short-sighted to describe these videos as hoaxes because what they're actually designed to do isn't to teach crafts, rather they exist to deliver visual satisfaction as content and then to be mentally discarded. Online, you'll find all kinds of content about how to be a good content creator. But there is something sad about seeing one with 450 views. Ugh. Well, why is that? This is because the success of content isn't really measured in its quality, although I'm sure many content creators would disagree with me. Successful content is measured in its metrics. Perhaps the inherent principle that needs to be understood about content then is that the quantity is the quality. Perhaps this derives from the possible origin of the idea of content as a symptom of the liquidation of form and content as such. When content dominates form without a synthesis of the two, the material holding it together no longer matters. And to push content to its logical possible conclusion means to create as much of it as possible, since there's no longer a container to hold it. But you can also say that content is actually pure form without content per se, in the sense of like, most of these things are solely the platforms, in the sense that the thing that they live on is the thing itself. It is the form. But the fact that you can say both of these contradictory statements at once at the same time speaks to the aforementioned like liquidation. So obviously a level of formal quality, although ask yourself what is formal in terms of what, might be necessary to maintain engagement, but this isn't always required if enough people are interested in the material of the content. Sometimes interest can even be derived from the sheer lack of formal quality. Typically, the content of higher quality doesn't usually denote effort because it doesn't need to. So visit the YouTube page for Watch Mojo and watch a few videos. You'll learn very quickly the quality of each video, at least on a veneer audio and visual level, requires very little overhead. The technical side of their content creation likely only necessitates a few templates for video formats, internal brand guidelines and subscriptions, and a knowledge of appropriate software like Premiere and After Effects. The aesthetic demands for content are low, likely as a result of the diminishing marginal return of aesthetics described by Toby Shore in his piece of the same name. Edgier aesthetics are devalued by their absorptions into content creation and distribution mechanisms spread over the now dispersed culture industry due to the millions and billions of cultural nodes and our ability to access all these nodes at the digital age is allowed. I put this slide in the wrong place, but this will visually. Oh, one second. This devaluation of aesthetics allows content after a certain point to break free of the need of aesthetic quality because it's understood at a cultural level that an aesthetic veneer gets in the way of raw consumption. Before, for an aesthetic to become popularized, it required the labor of artists working deeply within an aesthetic to develop it so that figures and entities of greater cultural clout could subsume and popularize it. Here's like a very popular example of this that people talk about in the late 2000s. Kanye did the Welcome to Heartbreak music video. You guys have ever seen it? It's like very early, like data motion stuff. But what he was riffing on. No. Deeper. Takeshi Murata's Pink Dot.
Yeah, that's a Chicago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's why we didn't get. I'm not saying we didn't get credit to him, but
No, it's not. The point is they didn't give credit to him. The point is they didn't. The point is not that he didn't give credit to him. It's just that the aesthetics created in this video basically became the overhead that Kanye didn't have to do, so they could get picked up later. And now data moshing is just like basically just like a mode that people use in like art schools to basically be like, it's just like another way to like do your work or something. It's like a tool. Yeah, but now it's basically templates.
that's why.
Yeah.
I mean, the album should be good.
No, yeah, people like Welcome to Heartbreak. It's a good not to the shit on Kanye. I like Kanye. However, content has a shriveled stomach and it doesn't even need to feast on the aesthetics created by individual artists. It's understanding, albeit opaquely, that those aesthetics are only there for a very 21st century idea of aesthetics, or should I say aesthetic, with gaps in between all the letters. I just love the title of this video is Outrun Grid Animation with Creative Commons. It just becomes, that whole thing has become so ubiquitous that it's just like, a template they have on YouTube that you can download for free. Content's understood to be a means to an end. So content that is shed aesthetics travels lighter because the actual content isn't really the thing itself. Template aesthetics often act as this aforementioned aesthetic filter. Content creators bow into their own brand. Template aesthetics require internal consistency across content, which in turn creates the overarching presence of a brand, what most content creators hope to be seen as, and thus encourages retention among a viewer base. It's like, oh, this is a brand, this is like a serious thing. I can go back to this YouTube channel, for example, and just rely there's going to be more stuff there later. Kanye's Welcome to Heartbreak video seems really trivial now when glitch effects can be achieved entirely with templates, presets, and plugins. However, the imminent qualities of templates can dominate the aesthetic it means to represent and manifest itself into its own thing. So the one me and my friends would like talk about like a while ago is like, I feel like it's sort of like fallen off now, but like when Cole Bennett was like at its peak or whatever, if you watch like literally like 3 Cole Bennett like Lyrical Lemonade videos, you could see all the After Effects like templates they had. And it became like extremely transparent. The big one that we all noticed was like the like eye effect, where it basically just like inflates whoever's like eyes, where you can download a template of that on like Google if you look it up.
Yeah, he talked about that.
Yeah.
He really told me because he went to the hall.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna say he skipped class, but he didn't really pay attention to class.
No, that's fine because he's like a DePaul core like student. He's like every DePaul person.
No, like actually that.
Yeah.
Trying to do so. Back when like Chance was trying to come up, he was making like a bunch of mini like concerts.
Mhm.
So because he's actually from like the suburbs, for all the way to Chicago.
He's from like Wilmette, isn't he?
No,
Where's he from?
he's it's passing. It's like a 2 hour drive from like Aurora.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know where Aurora is at.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like he would make that drive all the way to Chicago. And try to put up all these like Chicago like rappers. And, like, I don't know if you've heard of another quarter. But yeah, he actually talked about how he did all that and he would use like this shitty camera. He wouldn't use like these big things that people would think or these big programs.
Mhm.
Trying to like just tell you like you don't have to have all the specific equipment just to make something.
Yeah.
So I thought it was super interesting. And that's what he tagged as like the lemonade.
Wait.
People that don't want to work with him because of that specific thing that's like on it.
Oh yeah. I have friends that work with Cole Bennett. They do all this app stuff. I heard he's kind of an asshole. Well, not he's not an asshole, but like the people that work there are like very incompetent.
Yeah, I mean, you can, I'm not gonna say you can tell why, but you can.
It's kind of funny. But yeah, you only have to really watch like a few of their videos. I actually haven't watched any of this stuff like recently, but I remember in like 2018, 2017, you could like see every template they used, which is really funny. But when there's this uniformity to the abnormalities and iniquities and diversions of a body of work caused by the use of templates and presets and plugins, the mechanical foreshortening of the production process actually manifests itself in such a way that it becomes visible to the viewer. That's just to say that people notice like template aesthetics. So when I was in high school, I used like a RIP license of like Action Essentials 2 for like videos that I made with like my friends, which if you don't know what Action Essentials 2 is, yes, you do. You just didn't know it had a name. It's just like a bunch of like very basic like visual effects that you can overlay on top of videos. They have like a green screen background, so it's just very easy to composite in this stuff. So I remember a couple of years ago, we were watching Palm Springs with her roommate, and I noticed like an Action Essentials 2 explosion, and then I pointed it out, and I looked like a fucking loser. And then in 2020, her neighbor's kid made a Sonic the Hedgehog Halloween pumpkin or whatever. And I was like, that's funny. But then last year, I was like walking down my street and my neighbor's kid made a Shadow the Hedgehog pumpkin that looked exactly the same. And then I looked it up. There's a Pinterest tutorial for it. It's right there. You're like, there it is. That's the thing. So this whole like online template was revealed to me. So if someone imitates like something like a Watch Mojo video by replicating the way they introduce a video, it's like, what's up guys? This is Watch Mojo. Today we're doing a top 10 blank, blank, blank. They know exactly what you're doing. I didn't even have to say like Watch Mojo and you know what it is.
Doing that to like, basically, I'm not put on the brand. It's like, you're on the news and you already know you're watching exactly ABC.
Yeah.
This is ABC News.
It's like mid-Atlantic accent.
Yeah.
Or actually, no, it's a different one now. What's it called? Non-regional dialect. Mid-Atlantic accent.
You have the logos on the corner.
But so templates are prominent enough, they've developed markets and distribution channels of their own, such as videos, which is a subscription platform which gives its content creator users access to numerous templates for intros, graphics, music, and more. What if videos became prominent enough that consumers would begin to recognize specific videos templates? Would trends within videos templates be uncovered? Would the phrase videos core eventually be said? All this is just to say there's always people that will notice templates, and the number of those people are growing because more people are entering into content creation by virtue of the fact that in some ways everyone is a content creator. This isn't like a denunciation of templates per se, but understand they're like a tool that actually serves something else. So this thread by Muriel Harper? Is that her name? Yeah, Muriel Harper. Muriel C. Harper is informative. I remember this is big in like 2020 because I wrote this primarily in 2020. Blah, blah, blah. It's very strange when there's an instructional and non-optical allyship that has the creator's ad on every slide. The uniformity created by template aesthetics to every slide also conforms to the content's necessary professionalism in order to maintain retention. Ideological moral education becomes condensed into chunks of content designed for retention rather than long-term impact, and thus becomes just as discardable. As soon as I've read it, I'm already on to the next post, and the next post, and the next post, and also this one's really funny. Because the content of content isn't really the point. Content should be viewed as something which operates within its own tacit rules, because despite all the how-tos on how to make content, there actually seems to be something beyond the instructionals which effective content creators cannot articulate. The aesthetic or sensibility then form naturally with the non-form of content. So a key of content is its method of distribution, which, back to this, typically has zero marginal cost. It means we're all capable of creating content, and we do, but it expands beyond this. It's been a given for years that anyone can produce content, but one doesn't necessarily have to be consciously aware they're making content in order to be a content creator. This doesn't just manifest through reaction videos and Instagram story chain posting. Often the aesthetics of content can manifest themselves unconsciously through the unconscious content creator. To give an example I'll try to build off of, I often find myself trying to arrange text and images in my Instagram story in a professional way. What does that mean? It's not a business account, so why do I try to do it? I'm not impressing any of my friends with my Instagram design tastes, but content aesthetics are very insidious, and I may not be trying to make money off of Instagram, which is the end goal of every conscious content creator. But I want engagement and attention. And I understand engagement from the platforms where I've learned about getting engagement, from people talking about getting engagement with marketable content. And so a trait of content is not the need for it to produce revenue, but rather to receive engagement and retention, which is the key part. If the ability to gain revenue from content disappeared tomorrow, content would perhaps disappear, but the aesthetic sensibility of content would not. Someone could say like, damn bro, this is content core. A large through line seems to be the voice. In articles and videos on how to be a content creator, there's this constant emphasis on content creators finding their own voice and speaking or writing in a personable way to their audience. But as success is measured in metrics, a dominant voice has emerged, which is like the voice. The voice could best be viewed in parallel or as analogous to the mid-Atlantic accent or maybe the non-regional dialect of newscasters. The voice emphasizes personability, taking on a tone that's similar to an actor on coke in conversation at a party, bordering on true conversationality while maintaining this level of performativity and hyperactivity designed to keep the end user's attention at all times. Retention means revenue. Ad revenue. So this is my favorite one. This guy is fucking crazy. Audio.
Come on, keep one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right now.
Join my free gift giveaway. Subscribe to my channel. Like the video.
It's the scary teacher, right? The scary teacher keeps on getting pranked by her student, and she's called the scary teacher, right?
I'm putting in the background. This guy's fucking crazy. I also gotta talk about like the 3 AM thing. Do you guys know about the 3 AM thing?
Isn't like the calls like all that?
Only Mickey Mouse is there.
Yeah. Okay. You know about the 3 AM thing. I remember like in like 2018 or 17, my friend was like, do you know about the 3 AM thing? And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, there's all these like videos online where there's just like taking this potion at 3 AM. And he was like trying to figure out, it's like, why is it always at 3 AM? And he like was like, I think it's because there's like all of these kids that think 3 AM is this magical time where really bad things happen because their bedtime is like at like 8. And so it's like, whoa, this guy's staying up to 3 AM and he's gonna take like the girl potion or something like that. So there's a bunch of these that are just the ones that are targeted to kids. You know, they're like really insidious if they say like, I did this at 3 AM. That's when you know you're in like good territory. So in relation to this also, I've been thinking a lot about like Ryan Tricarden is a kind of progenitor of like content voice, and also Jerry Seinfeld. Because my roommate has been watching a lot of Seinfeld lately, and he does this really scary thing. This is Ryan Tricarden, if you guys haven't been shown him like SAIC. Ryan Tricarden's really funny.
I don't like it. It's hot.
You guys are gross.
You guys are talking too loud. I mean it. It says here that Stephen has the same birth mother as you, Mindy. 1 a year married off. Well, he was adopted by some very rich gays, but now he wants to relocate to someplace funky. I hate my one year birth mom. She's so private. She's an earth jumper. Someone should have taught her about choices.
Choose me, okay?
Okay. So, you perverted pool fags need to shut the hell down and drop off before I fire you. Next. Cracker. Dead to me, hair dryer. The parent moves on.
That's Ryan Tricarden. It's like an hour and 40 of that. Just like nonstop. It rocks. It's like really relentless. The Tricarden, Trecartin. All of his stuff is like on YouTube and Vimeo too. Obviously, a lot of it's riffing on reality TV because that's actually the object to work with in like the early 2000s. But it's weird because since he's working with digital video and not like very small scale like digital video, you kind of see a lot of the aesthetics of content kind of happen here first. That happen kind of unconsciously later on with content later. Also, I was thinking about Jerry Seinfeld because I've been watching a lot of Seinfeld lately, like I say, but he does this thing I've noticed in his performances that scares the shit out of me, where if he gets on like a long string of dialogue, you see him physically like in his performance, like turn away from the person he's supposed to be talking to in the show. And you can see he's gesturing less towards them and more towards the audience. Like Jerry Seinfeld knows you're looking at him and he's like really enjoying it. And it's like insane. I love it. But he's the only actor on the show that does it too. So the performance itself is just like the conversations in the show are just like a means for Jerry Seinfeld to get to that mode. It's awesome. He wants you to look at him. So in video content, this actually often manifests not only as fast talking, but also jump cuts, as you can see, which emphasizes the character of the voice. Also, the guy I showed you earlier is like the most extreme example, to the point where it folds over and kind of becomes less effective because you just kind of can't tell what he's saying like a lot of the time. He's too excited. But sometimes the people who aren't quite as effective at doing something are actually the best examples of it. So there's like ploys for re-engagement or embedded in like the non-form of content. So like and subscribe. But like and subscribe is a cliche, is exclusive to YouTube, which reveals another shade of content. No. More than ever, this is like a problematic formulation, but the medium, or better to say the platform, is the message. And that statement I don't want to naturalize because it's pretty much a symptom of the present, but I'll get to that in a bit. Content can always illuminate the hierarchical relationship that the content creator has with their platform, and sometimes a middleman in the form of like a partner, like Maker Studios on YouTube. So I'm watching my favorite YouTube channel. YouTube becomes the mediator, or better to say, I'm watching my favorite YouTube channel. YouTube becomes the mediator of this individual content creator and determines the range of possible content that could exist on this channel by means of its distribution, engagement, tools, widgets, advertising, acceptable content, its web culture, and of course, its compression. All of these are unaesthetic in context with their respective platforms, but take on a new aesthetic when they're removed from their home. Think of watching a TikTok compilation on YouTube of like the same joke. So there's like this sense of bewilderment that you feel when you're watching like TikToks and compilations when you're unfamiliar with the platform, because the context that created like whatever like jokes and memes that TikTok users are employing is like completely removed. Someone sees a TikTok meme, which is an inversion of like an inversion of an inversion of a joke, and it asks, how did this become a thing in the first place? And so what seems natural and like unaesthetic on that platform itself takes on aesthetic of its own, which removed from that context. And this is because for content, the individual video or article or vlog or whatever is not the thing itself. The thing itself is what's next up on the chain. So it's the platform. So the point of a Netflix show is not the show, but it's that you'll watch Netflix. It's pretty much the inverse of like the autonomous work of art. So the work and content exists entirely for something else. It exists for anything but itself. It doesn't make sense to address a video or something as an individual piece of content at all. Rather, content constitutes a whole body to be consumed in toto. A whole streaming platform, like a whole YouTube channel, or better, like all of YouTube itself, is more of the body that we'd be talking about. So you subscribe to Netflix, you don't subscribe to the show. But this phenomenon also isn't new, because in the same way, in certain ways, you could say that about television as well, which is important. Content becomes the aim of things supposedly outside the realm of content. So politicians making like gotcha faces for GIFs, lines in movies being written solely so they can be screenshotted. Music made solely to become TikTok famous. And note that these are like kind of top-down characters exerting influence on culture. So you didn't watch the debate, that's like, okay, because your timeline now is like full of like Kamala reaction memes. Phenomenon such as these reveal content is a new raison d'etre of things that previously seemed to serve other purposes. So content and meme culture make obvious the medium is the message, isn't a statement that ends in a period. It encompasses how those working in a medium, it can expect their work to be mediated by others in further mediums. And if they're playing on veteran, how they expect that mediation to be mediated. And also, this is just like a drive-by point, but it's possible that there's an aesthetic or unaesthetic pleasure of content that actually derives from its ability to sap other things of their ability to produce pleasure. So on like a consumption level, many of my friends have told me they don't really like film anymore because they don't have the attention for it. So this is also true at the level of production, and that forms literally fold into content. So now the majority, but not all of what I've been talking about up to this point is like smaller scale content production. But let's also talk about the other end of it, which is like bigger stuff, like streaming services, for example. But this is also a bit of like a false distinction, because small content creators are really just participants in larger cultural production nodes that essentially outsource work to their individual users. So it's like we love being a platform for our broad and diverse user base, just to be themselves, just to be creative. No, you're basically like an unpaid contractor when you're like posting on Instagram or YouTube. So Netflix in many ways is just the more effective model because it's more honest about what it is. So the next section is also kind of crosses over with a different talk I gave on cinematography and videography a while ago. So maybe some of my points will seem like they're kind of bleeding into that on accident. So sorry about that. Also, just to annoy Erica, because all my predictions that I made a year ago just came true. I want to say I wrote this part in like September. So content is like a category of an internal logic that necessitates expansion and thus a large infrastructure to continually produce it. Everyone's a content creator now, literally and figuratively. There's currently a content bubble. And now as I say this, it's popping. It's entirely possible that we're currently in a recession, which as of 2 days ago, there was just a report that the GDP of the US just started tanking for the first time since 2020 without the cause of the pandemic as a reason anymore. Bear market signs. And if indeed we are in a recession, when it's publicly recognized, the content bubble will probably pop. Fun fact, and this is a stat from last September, so this may not be true now. Netflix employs about 9,400 full-time employees. The average salary base at Netflix is $136,046. So what's 9,400 times 136,046? The point I'm making is when you're working at that level of scale, why did 1 billion shows get made a year? By a billion different streaming services and each getting like $100 million budgets. The shows and movies do not make money. Like straight up, they do not make money. Erica can vouch for me, they do not make money.
They don't make money.
They don't make money. Often they exist to funnel people into platforms, which do make money. But the content itself does not make the money independently. It makes it in terms of the platform. The platform is the thing making the money. It's a means to an end for streaming services. Whatever they put on there does not exist for itself, exists for you to get you to subscribe. That's the real end. In some ways, it's useful to deny any feelings one has towards the artfulness of these shows, whatever's on these platforms, and to grant all subjectivity to the executives funding these shows. Many of these shows exist to be massive tax write-offs. Real, that's not fake, that's 100% real. Everything gets made exists to be a tax fraud. If you want to get something made, find out a good way to do like money laundering.
That's really like all production companies, like for real in Hollywood.
That's all of it.
Yeah.
Be very good at laundering money. That's the number one tip if you want to get into movies. Even if you were like a director, number one thing. That's the most important thing I learned in film school is money laundering. So many of these, that is the primary end of these shows, just to be like, to launder money into tax like schemes. The demand for Apple, this is my personal point. The demand for Apple TV shows is entirely manufactured more than any other one. I want to say like me and my roommate last year got completely noited on Apple TV. I was so insanely paranoid because we were convinced for like a month that Ted Lasso was not a real show. We thought it was something that was like made up and like people were like, everyone on Twitter was in on the joke that they had made up like this fake person and were acting like this is like a real person. We're like, the fuck is Ted Lasso? There's all these jokes being like, Ted Lasso, the type of guy to do this for real. And I was like, who the fuck is Ted Lasso? And then I went home and my mom was like, Clay, have you watched this awesome show, Ted Lasso? And I was like, Ted Lasso is a psyop, Mom. Because Ted Lasso is a psyop because these influencers get paid by companies like WME to basically tell your audiences that, oh, this person kind of like Ted Lasso for real. And then people are like, who's Ted Lasso? And they look it up and it's like, wow, that show looks interesting. I'll watch that show. And then your mom tells you to watch it. I will not watch Ted Lasso. Also, just as another sidebar, if you see a show filming on your street in Chicago or anywhere else, they have to put up a permit. They have to put up like a notice like on your door. It'd be like, we're filming on your street. Just for FYI, and we're going to be filming between this hour and this hour. If it's Apple TV, pay very close attention to if they stay within that bracket. Because if they don't, Apple TV throws way too much money at shows. So the second they go over their time limit, go up to like a PA and be like, you guys are over your time limit. I'm calling the police. They will give you a bribe. Do not take the first bribe. Be like, no, I need you to get off. Hold out. You will get like 4 figures at least. So if Apple TV is like on your street, you need to extort them, and you will get money, probably on the spot. So anyway, that's my little rant about Apple TV. So there's this thing called Canva, not Canvas, but Canva. I think that's how it's pronounced because I've never heard it said. You know about it? Yeah. So they recently announced it's adding video editing to its program. So Canva is an in-browser design program that consolidates production distribution processes into a single platform. It has thousands and thousands of templates and eliminates the baseline of technical proficiency that production design jobs typically need. If you've wondered why every Instagram infographic looks the same, Canva templates are part of the answer. However, for centers of content creation like Netflix, the relative tendency for profits to fall encourages innovations in the production of content, which aims to gradually eliminate the necessity of the individual content creator, let content creator here mean anyone involved in the production chain. The recent attempt by the modern production chain to eliminate the lunch break reel and the subsequent strike by the IATSC, the union, are expressions of this. The necessity of the mass creation. They don't just try to cut lunch breaks because they're mean and bad people. They literally have to because everyone's in the red. This necessity in the mass creation of content is seen in Canva's new video editing program, which will eliminate the need for specialized editors. Given the infinite array of statistics that Netflix and all of them have access to, streaming services are likely privy to the fact that a content bubble is formed. An article last year in Forbes laid out the problem that Netflix faces. The actual profitability of Netflix has been a question for years, even more so for their streaming platforms. I only use Netflix as the model because it's the biggest streaming platform. And so things that are affecting them are affecting others even more to certain extents. If Netflix went out of business, everyone would be fucked. Netflix content outlays have been growing not just in absolute terms, but also in terms of content spending per active subscriber, and the company faces a paradox. While it needs to rein in content spending in the long run to boost cash flows, subscriber growth could slow or even decline, which it just did as of like 2 days ago.
So, you follow me? What do you mean by everybody's fucked? Because they already lost, like, what, like $2 billion?
Yeah.
So who's fucked?
People with jobs. Because, would you like to explain the recent Universal thing? I mean, the Warner Brothers thing?
Yeah, so basically right now, kind of to Clay's point about the content bubble popping, there are so many different streamers out there right now. They're all losing so much fucking money. Like, it's insane. CNN Plus like shut down after 2 weeks of being up, right? Because literally, like, who's gonna watch CNN Plus aside from like East Coast dads? And so another big part of that too is like, in order to save themselves, they all have to merge together, right?
What Paramount did, right?
Which is what
Yes.
Paramount did.
Because Paramount was for that 8 ends.
Paramount-
A bunch of streams, and then they all just merged.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paramount.
Precisely.
Yes.
Hulu, and then like.
Yeah, so
ESPN and-
Disney, first of all, super evil. Do not trust them. But like, Disney is basically holding like ESPN, Hulu, and I think they're trying to acquire some other companies as well. And then Paramount used to be CBS
Yeah.
and like, I forget what else, like
CBS
yeah, like
Yeah.
VH1, MTV, all of them, Viacom. So it's really crazy to think that like big like networks are being eaten up by streamers now too, which is insane.
So, in your experience, what's gonna happen with Hulu TV? Because Hulu TV basically has all of HBO Max and all in one. All those
Yeah.
streamers all in one, but in one app.
I mean, it's
And
kind of
very cheap too, so people are going towards
there.
that as.
Yeah. I mean, I,
To be fair, it'll probably get swallowed by someone. Because
yeah.
Voodoo doesn't have a high like that.
No, I'm talking about Fubu TV.
What?
Fubu TV.
Who?
Fubu, like FUBO TV. You can really watch live TV on it.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, it's
You know
like,
about that?
it's like a
I've heard a little bit about it.
a package, if you pay like $300 for like the whole year, and you have like basically cable TV and where you can watch HBO Max,
Why not just get cable?
no, but you can watch cable TV and everything that's on all the streaming services
Huh.
for a whole year. So basically, it's like you're saying, take for cable. Cable is $70 a month. Would you rather pay out $300 a whole year, or would you rather pay $70 a month?
Yeah. I mean, Fubo, I think is different because in those $300, they're like internally like spreading that out across like everyone else. They're like providing that service to, right? So like they're getting part of that money in return back to like every streamer and every like place they're getting their content from. So I don't really know like how that package will necessarily work in the future.
It's like basically a profitable middleman act, like
Basically,
operation.
what Netflix did, right, in the beginning, how it was all like cheap stuff, and then
Yeah.
Yeah.
they started pumping out the dollar, and that's why they're losing subscribers.
I imagine like that will probably get eaten by someone who can like afford to buy them. Because I imagine that valuation is pretty cheap, but expected to go up.
Because from what I heard, I actually, I don't know, you work with the NBA,
I do, yeah.
so this director, have you seen Post?
I'm not.
Okay, well, I know the director, and he actually hates WNBA because WNBA gave him $5,000 to make like a short film for,
Like a spec phone.
no, it was X-Files, for the X-Files. And they basically said, no, we're like, sorry about that, we're not gonna do it. They used the idea on the next episode, he watched it. He got upset, and he tried releasing his version to a film festival. They told him, if you do this, we're gonna sue you. He said, no, I don't care. He did it anyway. And then he ended up making Post, which is like, it happened, it released during like the whole pandemic. It was the film, like they're doing the seance.
Mm.
And basically, my point is that, yeah, I just lost my track. No, so my point is that he basically told me that what you just said, Clay,
Mm.
to hold your ground, because they're gonna try to scare you, use this tactic. And also he was pitching a film to A24 lesson. And he was telling me that there's a chance that, basically Disney's trying to buy
Well,
A24.
my friend knows the guy who runs A24, and that guy just wants to be the next Disney, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
That guy's really funny. People have tried to cancel him multiple times because he keeps saying the N-word and he's white, but he has like a bunch of like black friends who are like, no, he can say that, which is very strange. It's like a really funny deal. A24 is really funny when people are like, oh, they like talk about, it's like, I hate Disney. It's like, we need more places like A24. And it's like, A24 is the more insidious Disney.
They're all
No, yeah.
basically the same.
I live right next to the music park.
Yeah.
All they don't show like films that are coming out like Jurassic Park, but they only show A24 films or a foreign film or any type of independent film. So that's why like you said, kind of see, because in the way they do act like Disney, and maybe Disney will buy it because they're trying to introduce adult content now.
That makes sense, probably, because I mean, they already showed that when they bought up 20th Century Fox, as most of that is like more.
Adult, like basically like the Marvel show, like very like
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the shows and the film.
Whatever adult means now,
Yeah.
because it's all very infantilizing. I'll wrap this up because I'm nearly at the end of this. Where was I at? Oh yeah, I found it. So Netflix content outlays have been growing, not just in absolute terms, but also in the content spending per active subscriber, and the company faces a paradox. While it needs to rein in its content spending in the long run to boost cash flows, subscriber growth could slow or even decline if it doesn't keep updating its library at the same pace. Of course, whenever the content bubble pops, a mass liquidation of the workforce will follow, layoffs. But not of Erica. She's
Not
very
me.
secure.
Yeah, I'm good.
What every streaming platform boardroom is tasked with then is to retain the ability to churn out content without the workforce content currently requires. So Terminator in the back of their heads, many worry that deepfakes illustrate a disturbing growth in the intelligence of AI. But to relocate the problem of AI generated images in something more concrete, the real disadvantage of AI image generation creation is that since the goal of these images is to perfectly recreate reality, but really in the forms of already existing images, the development of this AI is founded on the desire to eliminate the extraneous and expensive image creating workforce. Currently, the art associated with AI imaging is found in its non-relation to reality and newness, because to locate the artfulness of AI images in the accurate representation of reality would be to acknowledge one's own superfluousness, which image creators, content creators, and artists cannot allow themselves to do, considering the tenuousness of their employment. Of course, the accurate representation of reality will be how AI-generated images will be sold to content-producing apparatuses. As we've observed, there are unconscious aesthetics married to content. If the content bubble indeed pops, there would likely be an aesthetic reckoning with these hitherto mostly unconscious aesthetics by the disgruntled makers and creatives now out of a job and feeling jaded by about anything and everything. The dumbest dumbass future exec you knew in film school might be talking about Netflix aesthetics. That comment is mostly directed to you because I'm sure you could think of like the dumbest dumbass future execs that we went to film school with.
I can.
Part of why content looks the way it does is because a lot of it needs to be made. As cinema becomes just another form of content, what amounts to cinema begins to reproduce the aesthetics of content, choices serving primarily to retain attention, extremely light form to prioritize information, the ability to reference anything without engaging with it, etc. I gotta show you this shit. Hold on. This video is fucking crazy. Have you guys seen the new Space Jam movie? You saw that? I didn't watch it, but this clip just popped up in my Twitter feed like months ago, and I was like, this is fucking crazy. This is crazy.
You need a plan.
It's exactly like you in every way. Except 1/8 your sons.
Sylvester, is that you?
Sabotage! What are you doing here?
Can we just get some players who are at least tall enough to ride a roller coaster?
Sing it, Sam.
Oh, you got baggage, lady. I can relate. What?
Come on, man.
Well, if it had on, he's at least 42.
Heartbreak, Marvin.
Bugs, I'm getting the feeling that I need to be very literal with you.
We've done tests on your Thatcher thing. It turns out his condition is irreversible. We'll never erase what I saw from my brain. Is your problem now, doctor?
There's that. Obviously, this is kind of cheating because cartoons are already like, have like a different kind of pace than like other types of moving image. There's like a kind of like faster rate in which information is given to you. But at the same time, you can see it's kind of entering into this mode where it can kind of just reference anything and everything. And also it's every shot, every cut is designed to like re-grab your attention and be like, look at this.
All the references all like from the past to like now, especially with River.
Yeah, I would say like a lot of it is just like, look at this, we can reference anything, but also it doesn't really have anything to do with anything. There's nothing actually imminent from the actual work itself that says we need to reference like Rick and Morty or something. It's just because it's there and it's in our range of property that we have the rights to.
I don't know about it because it's LeBron and not Michael Jordan. Because if it was, say Michael Jordan was now here,
Mhm.
Michael Jordan was hypothetically right now, like, they would watch him. It was crazy. They just brought all this old like pop culture from like 50s and now.
Yeah, if they
Does that make
didn't,
sense?
if they did, do you just mean to say if they did it in like the 90s, would have a different reaction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about LeBron. They know LeBron is good.
But this mode is like, it's crazy, but it's also not. Like, this makes complete sense to like everyone in this room. It's like, you watch and it's like, of course they would do that. It's just like, yeah, it's not that insane. But when you kind of think about it for a second, you're like, why are they doing this? Why?
They're doing it to respect all of, I'm not saying all of their, I think 3 is
Oh, not even the LeBron stuff, just like everything that happens in that clip. LeBron is the least like, that makes the most sense. So
I mean, they just own so much IP now.
you can just pull anything out of their ass.
Yeah.
So as Kish, formulating rules of thumb are formed that give rise to aesthetics. When the content and streaming bubble pops, there will be an aesthetic reckoning as the actual volume of content being made drastically decreases. That's what I wrote in October. What's happening now is Netflix and Disney are year-long lows, and now Warner Brothers and Discovery are merging, and a bunch of people are about to lose their jobs from that. A bunch of subsidiaries are getting terminated as a result.
It's also just like a trickle down effect too, right? So like from what's happening like at the agencies right now, like all of these jobs are disappearing from like an executive level, like pretty much like everyone at Discovery is about to get laid off, which is first of all very scary for them. But also all the shows and content that they're creating, poof, gone, because they're using like fake money, right, to make everything. So all of our clients that were staffed onto those shows are now jobless too.
It's a very speculative market.
Yeah.
Bubble. But you're also probably like, why does this matter to me? Like, I don't work in streaming. I don't work in film except for you. But for most people here, it's like, this does not matter for me. I'm like an artist.
I mean, it's been that if people, they want to get it.
It does.
Right there where you just.
No, it does. But at like a more general level, say you like didn't enter into that at all. Like, why would it matter to you? And it's like, as you've noticed, you've likely been compelled, whether implicitly or explicitly, from various nodes within the art world to make content to increase your reach or build your brand or to get clout, etc. So however you may have noticed, the motives for content in many ways seem to actually be at odds with the motives of art itself. So meanwhile, the individual artwork, as Lisa's modernism conceived it, is meant to be an ends in itself. It's the autonomous work of art, like that idea. Content's distinct feature is that it exists for something other than itself, but seems to actually become an end in itself over time, subjectively in the people that make it and consume it. It's a tool, and yet it can appear often as the thing. It's been observed that a lot of modern painting seems to be made with it being Instagrammable in mind. A lot of people have said that, and like there was like a billion articles in the mid 2010s about that. And yet by doing so, it actually seems to undermine itself as painting. They say you don't experience a painting unless you see it in person because there's a 3D effect. But what about paintings which are made explicitly with the intent to be seen in 1350 by 1080 pixels on Instagram? I'll give you no directives about what to do. And I'm definitely not going to tell you to keep your work off the internet. If you're successful enough, it'll end up there whether you like it or not anyway. What I will say is if you're making content for yourself as an artist, it shouldn't be something you're carrying out unconsciously. Rather, I think you need a clear idea in your head about what am I doing, why am I doing this, and what is this serving? I'd like to open up the idea that since content has unique aesthetics of its own that may have naturally come into being, and since it's considered unart, it is actually very ripe to be appropriated for art in both its content and form, which has already been done. John Raffman's recent work, all of alt-lit from the 2010s and now alt-lit 2.0. There's an assertion by some meme accounts that what they do is art. I'm not going to uphold any of this and just be like, yes, this is what the present needs, but I'm simply going to throw out that this is already there to a certain extent and is like ripe as an object. One of the main problems of content, and this is how I'll end it, and a problem of speaking about it as a unique category at all, is the matter of it being an avoidance of the problem. So when you talk about content, you speak from the perspective of the platform itself, or you don't really speak from the problem, the work itself. You really kind of avoid the problem of talking about like the actual work. And what the fuck? There we go. Yeah, you don't speak from the perspective of the person making the material. But at the same time, the people making the work have actually grown accustomed to speaking about it that way themselves. People talk about it's like, oh, I make content, I make Instagram content. But what they're actually doing, it's like drawings, and they put it on Instagram. You don't really want to talk about the drawings, you talk about the content. And it's like, what's that about? So it's a real phenomenon in the world, but it cannot be reduced to that if we're going to call ourselves like artists. We can't just like reduce ourselves to talking at like that level, because it kind of naturalizes something that's actually become very obscure. So we have to work imminently from within the work, both when we make it and talk about it. What does your work itself do? What is the work doing by itself, not for something else? What aesthetic experiences induce? Blah, 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 blah. But yeah, that's my presentation. I'll close it out there. But yeah. Yeah, let me know if you guys have questions for either me or Erica.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So with this content level, we're saying like how all these jobs are disappearing. If I want to start off as like a low-level animation artist, and I can't go to cable because that's dying, and I can't go to streaming because of all the job loss and all that, where do I go?
I would guess a studio right now. So like, and you know, we can talk about it too. Like, I'm happy to give everyone my email and like try to help out and be as, you know, resourceful or useful as possible. But right now what's happening too is like animation. Right now is a really good time to get into animation because of the pandemic and everything. Like people have really come to realize like, oh shit, like animation like is really just picking up steam right now. And like the box office right now is proving it. Right, so like Sonic 2, huge, not technically animation, but like.
What's animation?
It is animation.
Is it really? Okay,
Yeah, it's just-
clearly that shows how much I know about the world of animation.
You saw the first song.
We did see the first Sonic, that was crazy. I've yet to see the second one, but it like blew Ambulance out of the water, that new like Michael Bay movie.
Oh yeah.
Which I
forgot
guess
about that.
isn't super surprising, but like Sonic 2 made like a lot more money than everyone was expecting. And then Bad Guys right now also doing a really good job. And so generally, I think it speaks to like how animation and just like family friendly content is like doing really well because of, you know, everyone's excited to go back to the movies and like, you know, the semblance of normalcy is like coming back, right?
Do you think it's also because it's a video game character? It's not kind of video.
I mean-
With Detective Pikachu. When it came out, everybody wanted to go see it. It's open.
People like the Detective Pikachu because he's cute and fluffy.
He is cute and fluffy. Yeah, I'm sure that also has part of it too, but I'm also sure that like, you know, just from like a general perspective, like if your kid is like 4 years old and like is excited to go to the movies for like the first time they'll probably remember, right? Like that's a very like memorable thing for them. Like
The only reason I brought up that one is because I remember growing up, I was playing Resident Evil. When the Resident Evil film came out, everybody wanted to go see it. Same with Doom film came out.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody wanted to go see it. It's a video game. And they wanted to see how it would look on screen with real actors.
But those are more like adult oriented.
I mean, but still though, when they came out,
But most of the kids probably don't know Sonic is a problem.
I'll say
Yeah.
kids know Sonic is, but I will say something about this because I've overheard this on conversations she has at like phone, like work calls or whatever. And I did like some research about like, I used to work for a professor and did research on like events or whatever about how to get people to show up to events. And then when the pandemic started, that like pivoted to talking about how do you get people to show up to virtual events? And there's a problem with virtual events because who gives a fuck about going to a virtual event? It's bullshit. So the game became, what's the dumbest thing I can do to get people to pay attention and to be like, I'll show up to this. This is so stupid. But when I've listened to your like phone calls, there's this kind of way that agents have of talking, of being like, this would be really funny if we got just like the dumbest actor possible to be in the dumbest property possible, because people would actually watch that because they'll be like, this is so stupid. This is so dumb. And then they go and pay $15 for it. I would say it's part of the appeal of like the Sonic movie compared to other video game movies, because that used to be like a big thing of like video game movies always bomb in box offices.
Doesn't that go down as well with like all the Fast series?
I think
every
people,
movie, like, it keeps getting older, something stupid happens.
they definitely make them like crazier if it goes on, but I feel like people actually just like really like those.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
talking about making the next one at work right now. Big
That's-
drama.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
didn't like the director stepped down for creative differences.
Yeah, so now they're trying to staff a new one. But to answer your question, back to that, like definitely now's a good time to, you know, go to these production companies and studios and like pull up, you know.
How would you come across production? Oh,
Oh, I was just gonna see like how recently these guys that got, you know, basically.
Oh,
Video.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, I think, more of what we've been talking about today, right? Like these smaller companies are just gonna keep getting eaten up. But I mean, outside, sorry, maybe I didn't understand the question, but like,
I was just gonna like comment like they, you know, see like they all got kind of, you know.
yeah, it's tough, but like, you know, finding a way in is like, you know, yeah.
for the next few years, like
It's
admittedly,
bleak.
it'll be like pretty rough
Yeah,
of like getting work.
it will be bleak. Admittedly, animation probably is a little better right now
Yeah.
compared to like trying to enter into like an HBO Max or like,
Animation has less overhead too, so it's like to keep stuff in like theaters and stuff, they're more encouraged to like make animated films happen because they can do them for less money,
yeah.
usually.
A big thing too, to try and like get into the world of animation is trying to enter into like these like outside like organizations. Like I know Women in Animation is really good. They offer like mentorship and stuff like that. And like, it's kind of like a class outside of the school, right? Like you meet over Zoom like once a week and you go over like different concepts, and they offer like networking opportunities too. And that's really a good way to get your foot in the door.
It was Women in Animation, right?
Yeah, they're a really big one. And I think they also offer like internships and stuff like that. I have a friend who's currently in it too.
So,
Juliana.
oh,
Yeah.
okay. Wait, doesn't Mac work for DreamWorks?
Yeah, we also have a friend who works for DreamWorks right now, who
Yeah.
also worked on Bad Guys.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow,
I know. Yeah,
I completely forgot about that.
I know. Do you guys have any other questions?
yeah, how would you approach a company like that?
Say again.
Like, how would you pitch something to them? Because obviously they give people, you know, ideas every day, right? And it's like big, and then like,
Right,
Look, we just
How would
watched
you
someone
actually-
pitch the stupidest shit on the planet like 2 hours ago.
we did.
they could.
It was fucking dumb.
What if you're trying to be stuck, pitch something serious?
Well, I think it depends on a lot of things. I think one, it
It's not when you
helps.
set up the walk over here. You're like, there's just one thing that matters.
Yeah, we were actually just talking about this on the way over, because the call that we were on this morning was kind of ridiculous. But basically, it really just depends on who you know, which is sad.
Yeah. Have you heard of Clubhouse?
I have
Yeah.
heard of Clubhouse.
So I was in, so there's like making groups because there's a lot of actors obviously in the film industry, and it mostly relies on also race.
Yeah,
And what he did, he tried doing a contest and pitched the best script and whatever script was best, he would fund the short film. And then both like, you know, post it in all the film festivals. But he would also bring in like agents and managers to like answer questions of how would you go about these people. And it's basically like a whole process because like you have to have an agent, and then the agent talks to the manager. And then say we have a specific thing like, I want this actor for this role. And then they're all like, okay, but what else? Like, what if that actor can't do it, or other people?
Yeah.
You know, it's like that. So how would you pitch something serious that's not stupid, right? Stupid things get greenlighted, other stupid things.
Yeah, I mean, again, at work, I see like a lot of good things get turned down. It really is just like who's attached to your team and like the relationship building there. Because even if you have like the best project in the world, like if you don't have like a good production company backing it, if you don't have a good director for it, if you don't have a good like relationship with whoever the buyer is, right? Or whoever like you're looking to sell this to, it just won't get made. Like there are so many projects that we're working on and probably out of like, I don't know, like currently my agent and I are out with like 15 different projects and probably only one of them will get picked up, right? So I would say it's less about like how good it really is, but more so like finding the right people to help you push it over the finish line, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because what I was told is it's better to say you're gonna write some script for this thing, but write it from a book, you're adapting it from a book,
Mhm.
rather than doing it like a personal story or something else, because it has a guaranteed audience. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what I was trying to ask, like, how did you pitch something like that? Obviously, you just said one of them will get it. But maybe it would be shitty, right?
I would say like, just on this, the thing Erica said earlier about like mentorship programs is actually key, because I really do need to emphasize like people who are like, oh, well, you actually need to talk about like this topic rather than this topic, or this topic rather than this topic in script, like don't know what they're talking about. Like to get picked up, scripts get picked up for completely arbitrary reasons. Like it's like complete bullshit. Like you'll see the worst show on the planet get made, but it also doesn't matter because what qualifies good in the film world is also completely arbitrary. What you need to do, this is going to sound like completely cynical because it is, because it's also real,
Yeah.
is to like find like benefactors. That's why mentorship programs are like really useful, because if you find like some exec for like Sony Pictures Classics who's like, I'm going to help you out. I'll kind of help you out a little bit. That will like start your career.
Yeah.
And there's like a lot of programs like that.
It sounds stupid, but the best way to dip your toes into the industry is to make a horror. And why, like, because obviously you watch a horror film, but most of the shit doesn't make sense. Like, you know that that's gonna happen, and the characters still try to, like, out of curiosity, go in and see what's gonna happen. Like, for, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre movies, like, Scream movies, like, they know the outcome, but they still, you know, and plus the viewer knows what's gonna happen, but they still continue to watch it at the point they were proving in the slide. So they said, even if you don't like to do that, at least try to. That way from there you can get, you know, like how she said, you can find people that, you know, that can back you up. And then you can. You know,
I would say you don't even really need to show work to get like, this also sounds like very cynical. You'd like literally don't even need like a body of work to like get someone to back you. It's literally like a conversation can make it happen if you're charming enough.
Yeah. I mean, for instance, right, like
It almost like doesn't matter.
like a real life example that I witnessed was like this guy my agent was talking to today. A couple
Shit
months,
sucks.
yeah, a months back, like in December, he was talking to us about how he really wanted to do a documentary on Barney, like Barney the dinosaur, the purple one, and how people apparently really hate Barney. And I like looked at my agent and I was just like, what is this guy talking about? And now he's making it off of that one conversation because he pressured my boss into being like, can you help me like reach out to these production companies and like, you know, maybe like one of them will like, you know, want to do it.
Have you tried to like a survivors thing?
No.
No, it's very much like why Barney got #canceled.
He said one of the dumbest things I've ever heard this morning that I was like literally like punching myself in the face. Like after he said it.
Yeah.
He was like,
Yeah, because they were bringing that whole thing up with Ben Stiller, like Ben Stiller's not even that funny, but he made it because of his father.
Yeah.
And then that's why like Nicolas Cage, he changed his whole like name because he's actually part of the Capital family. And he wanted to like not use his actual name to make it. He wanted to do his own like body work to make it. Which most people don't know that Francis Ford Capital is basically the and that whole family is.
I mean, it's all public information too.
Yeah.
If you look it up on Wikipedia, you'll see how many like people are related to each other. It's really crazy.
yeah, half the people we went to like film school with were just like, you just figure out it's like, oh, your dad is this person. Oh, your like mom is
You
this
just have to,
person.
like, you just have to accept it, because most, like, I'm talking about the audience, they don't know who, like, oh shit, he's related to this director.
Right.
That actress.
Yeah. I mean, even beyond that too, like if you like work your ass off and like you meet the right people, you will like succeed
Yeah.
in this industry. Like for instance, I don't know, like I come from a pretty low income family, like here in Chicago, and now I work at WME, right? And I just like worked my way into that just by literally like emailing someone and being like, hey, y'all hiring? And it was just, really a lot of it is just luck, to be honest. Like I had no relation to the industry at all. So like, you know, you never know. It's always best to just be friendly. That's my one thing that I will say. Like,
Yeah.
you don't even have to approach it from like a really gross, like networky aspect either. Like the way that I frame it is just like every stranger is just like a potential friend, right? So just make friends and be nice to people and they'll reciprocate back and they'll want to help you.
False.
Most of the time they will. Other times they'll try to tear you down, but
So it's like a 75-25% chance.
yeah, you know, it just depends on the day, I guess. But yeah, do you guys have just like any other general questions too?
What, like, city specifically, if you want to go to film, like, you could do New York or
Yeah, you just answered your own question.
LA?
Yeah, I mean, I will say Chicago has a really like growing like indie and documentary scene, which is cool,
But
but
you're pinning yourself into a very specific niche if you stay here, because there is a Chicago film that you can like, I can watch clips from like 5 seconds of like a Chicago short film, be like, oh, they're doing Chicago. Oh, this is like Chicago style though. Yo, they're making a Chicago style web series. And it's all about being like just like a beautiful young person just trying to get along in this like freaking hell world. And like, I'm just doing drugs and having sex and you're just trying to like get along in life. And that's like what it's all about. It's like mumblecore runoff and it's like whatever. There's also like Chicago Fire. If you want to join the union, you can work on Chicago Fire, Chicago PD. But I don't know if you want to do that because working in the union sucks in Chicago.
yeah, I mean, another big problem I will say that Chicago has is like there's no like pre-production here at all. It's strictly like on-site production and like some post, but like I would say Chicago's like bigger thing here is like
Actually, it's production post.
yeah.
Yeah.
So there's really like, if you ever want to like become like more behind the scenes, right? Like, you know, an executive or a producer, right? Either LA or Chicago would probably be best. And even then I would say New York is probably a more like fully developed version of Chicago in terms of like the
There's like a
documentary
niche.
scene. They also do a lot of music in New York, which is cool.
What real you in to the West Side? Was it just a job, or do you actually like the style of
I moved to the West Coast mostly because I am from Chicago and I have never lived anywhere else. And so I also faced the same question, like, where will I go? And at the time, it was just an easier jump to move west because I knew more people there who had like who are a little more established and stuff like that. And like people like offered to help me out. Like I moved there and I didn't have a place to live, so I like couch served. And it was just, yeah, I felt like I had like a better kind of like security net in case like shit really did hit the fan and I would have to move back. And luckily that didn't happen. But generally, to your point about like the whole like notion of Hollywood too, a lot of pre-production happens out there. All of the big like studios, execs, networks, etc. are out there. There's just in general, I would say a lot more opportunity. Not to say that there is an opportunity here.
No, there's like a lot more there.
There's like so much out there, regardless of what you want to do. And like, if you want to pivot, it's way easier to do it out there than here. Right?
That's fine. There's a lot of opportunity out there, but in reality,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
There's just nothing here.
Yeah.
Would it be beneficial to go outside the country, like, around?
Really, I guess for animation, I know Canada is really strong at animation.
Then you have to live in Canada.
That's true. But Canada's
I'm
nice.
fine with that.
Yeah, Canada's nice. Outside of that, I also know that London is a big hub, but that's really all I know to that extent. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, yeah, it really does just come down to like the relationships that you have with people, sadly enough. But I don't know. Feel free to pick my brain.
In terms of like finding internships that like apply to your specific field, I've tried Handshake.
Nah, handshakes, don't do that. No. Don't use email, like personal emails.
Yeah.
Find people's emails, like dig them up and send them personal emails.
Honestly, the best thing you could do, like, if you know that someone works at a particular company that you're interested in and went to SAIC, find their email and email them and be like, hey, like, I'm at SAIC right now. You'd be really surprised, honestly, to see like one of these people just like, they see, you know, SAIC and they feel like really good about that. They're like, oh, yeah.
You should
Like,
talk to the admin because I know if you're like, I'm interested in working in like this thing, do you know of any alums that like work there? I'll be like, oh, this person does, and get their email. And then you like hit them up and like, can you give me an internship somewhere?
it honestly makes them really happy. Like, it's really weird.
Yeah, people feel very important when they get asked that question.
Yeah, like they will do anything in their power to help you. It's really crazy. Yeah, exactly.
That's what it is.
Yeah,
I'm about to invest in you.
yeah, quite literally. But yeah, that's the biggest thing. Yeah, Clay can share my email with like all of you guys.
Yeah, put it in like a discussion channel. Which one do you want me to give them?
Just my personal one.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah,
put that in
of course.
discussion
My
channel.
stuff is not bullshit stuff like that, even though it sounds weird how forms, documentaries.
Yeah,
That's a lot of money that they're throwing in, because from what Jed told me, they gave them literally 5,000 just to keep like 15-minute short film.
yeah. I mean, WME doesn't. like-
5,000 is not a lot of money,
Yeah, 5,000
But that's
is.
still a lot of money, like.
but it's like
It's
not.
not.
Yeah.
It's like nothing.
What's the like most surprising thing you've seen get passed? I'm not gonna say stupid, but like most. Like,
No,
wow,
say it.
it's actually not.
Oh my gosh. Well, at WME, I specifically work in non-scripted. So I see a lot of reality TV, a lot of documentaries, a lot of limited series and music content. And I would say the most surprising thing right now, so WME is responsible for pretty much like every evil reality TV show that you've seen
Ever.
ever. Like the Kardashians, that's our fault. FY Island, Love Island, The Bachelor,
Did they do a circle?
They did The Circle. They did Too Hot to Handle. What's the new one? The Ultimatum. Have you guys seen it? Have you guys seen it? The Ultimatum?
The one you showed me, the fucking pitch packet you showed me yesterday was so stupid.
Oh, yeah.
That one is fucking dumb.
So the newest one that they're about to come out with, that they're currently in production on, and is probably gonna come out on Netflix. It's basically called Cougar Island. And it's about they cast like one like man to go to an island with like older women, essentially. Yeah, it's basically that. And people are apparently really excited about it.
No, things get made because they're dumb and people know people watch dumb things.
Yeah.
Like people are giggling in boardrooms being like, people watch this.
Yeah.
I can watch it, like, have something in the background playing while they're working.
Nah, people watch it.
I will watch it. I probably will watch it, you know?
It's like the Morbius.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking so.
Hey, have you seen that video?
Yeah, I saw
like
the teaser for that one.
No, I kind of read it.
Yeah.
I was like, no, this one. This one, I was annoying. It was
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, I like
There is a chance that I get really crap. I do enjoy some film that they have, they're very underrated in my opinion. What would happen if another company made that? What happens to their specialty?
Then maybe buy them up or they get liquidated in like an auction to be sold off. And they could either be put on another platform or they could be shelved inside like a company's catalog and not see the light of day.
Because I actually like buying the film. And there's films in there that I want to buy, and I can't be subscribed to it.
No, it's pirated.
Yeah, just pirating it.
I don't want to do that.
No, I mean like,
It's just because I know.
they don't release physical copies of a lot of these films like you actually have to.
It's just, if it was me, I would be pissed off somebody probably. I want that whole part.
No, you shouldn't be, because it's not about that. Like, if someone pirated my movie, that's a W for me.
Yeah.
Like,
Going through the effort to pirate your film, like.
my movies will never be profitable. If someone is like putting in the work to get that torrent seed for me, it's like, that's a
dope.
bigger W than someone buying something, because that's more effort. People are putting in more effort to watch my shit.
Yeah, I mean, I would say too, a lot of the reason why, like, for instance, my family canceled their Netflix subscriptions, and I'll probably have to use Clay's. But like, I would say since a lot of Netflix's original appeal is gone, right? Like they used to be like a conglomerate of like everyone's favorite like content, right? They used to have The Office, they used to have Parks and Rec, they used to have, you know, whatever other sitcom that people really loved, right? Gone. And what are they left with? All of this trashy reality TV that we create. And like, you know,
There's the idea of
these,
like the
Netflix originals.
the new model that Netflix has been working off like the past 10 years is they want as many originals as possible to not pay licensing fees.
Yeah.
Because their overhead was getting too out of pocket, like with like how much licensing fees they're having to pay to like NBC, for example.
Yeah.
Like the Office's licensing fee was insane.
So now nobody gives a shit about Netflix originals. They're like the reason why we were buying Netflix was for all the other stuff that we couldn't get anywhere else. And so now they're opting to do these like Hulu, Disney, ESPN plans, right? Because it's like 3-in-1 and cheaper. And like HBO Max, right? They're also cracking down on like the password sharing, which is probably another reason why a lot of people are like, bye, right? Like, I would say it's a lot of different factors why Netflix is not performing as well as they are anymore. But if they do like get sold, it probably will just come down to like stuff getting shelved, sold, or just like
She got like,
distributed
if you go under, you have to liquidate your stock to like make even to pay back people that invest in you.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just how it be.
Aren't they adding ads to Netflix?
Are they? I don't
They
know.
are,
There
they're
you go.
gonna do an ad-based
So it's
model.
like Hulu or Amazon, basically.
Yeah, but with like shittier content.
That'll be awesome. I felt great the other day watching, we went to like Rock Island, watch like, just watching Family Guy on Hulu. There's so many great like ads for Family Guy on Hulu. Just having a great time. Love
You
Family
guys-
Guy on Hulu.
Yeah, did you guys know that Clay is a big Family Guy fan?
Love Family
That's
Guy.
a funny show.
Yeah, Family Guy is great. I had a Family Guy Instagram account like all last year. I like posted a different picture every day. It was awesome. Love Family Guy.
He would send his posts to me every day.
Yeah.
He'd be like, look at my cool Family Guy post.
Like that episode where he posted a Facebook post and he said,
Oh yeah,
And then-
I know what you're talking
"What's
about.
wrong? Is there anything I can do? Like, give me your car. And then, Black Mike's like, you have to, you said, and where?
Oh, there it is.
I guess I don't know how long this class
How would
is
you,
even.
what it takes? But I have four.
Yeah, I'll probably end early today.
Oh my gosh,
So
ends at
how-
4?
Yeah, I mean, usually there's like more shit to do.
Damn, guys.
It's like 4 classes.
Wow,
Yeah, the classes are usually like 3-hour classes here.
damn.
And those have non-studio classes, the other ones are like,
Yeah.
9 to 5 with 2-hour break.
Wow, y'all are braver than the troops.
That's why- That's why you got, a sub-grad and you said hello. And everybody just like drained.
Yeah. Plus,
Oh,
it's
you're
fast
drained,
weekend
huh?
too, isn't it?
I don't know about you guys, that's great.
Yeah.
So where would you get an entertainment for?
Where would you get one?
Yeah.
Who do we know that's going into entertainment law?
I know there's one person,
There's someone we know that is like,
Catherine Kearney, Katie Kearney.
yeah, yeah.
The only
Um,
reason I say that is because I know companies want the best you.
Right.
Especially if you're a newcomer, they know, it's like they know that you don't know the business
right.
as well.
I mean, where you get an entertainment lawyer, I probably couldn't answer that, but admittedly, you don't really need one, to be honest. Unless you're like really about to like make, you know, a 6 or 7 figure deal, right? Like that's when you would need one. I would say a lot of entertainment law is like pretty accessible online. And if, you know, you do end up being fortunate enough to like, you know, meet people who kind of know what they're talking about, they will explain it for you. Like most agents, I would say back in the day, like it was necessary for them to go to law school. I would say most agents these days like aren't lawyers. Like most of the stuff is pretty straightforward and it's just like information that gets passed down to you.
You're saying you basically don't need anything.
Yeah. You also don't really need an agent. What you do need is a manager though, like someone that you really trust, because agents will drop you if you don't perform.
Where would you do it? Because I know.
You got homies?
Yeah, your
So some
homies.
people you know that are more responsible than you.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it literally is like, it's really crazy to even say that, but like, it really is just like, you know, who you trust enough to like manage you as a business. So anyone that you know that's taken, you know, econ,
What I'm trying to ask
business classes.
a manager in the business. Because if it's your homie, then,
No, you actually do want your homie.
Yeah,
no, I'm saying like who has a connection. You know, at least like 2
I
will
mean,
get you in.
no one, and I say this very broadly, right? Like, unless you have your homie be your manager first, you will not get a bigger manager, right? Like you can't just like contact a manager and be like, can you be my manager? That manager will have to want to be your manager. Because managers have more on the line than agents do. Like, big managers,
Managers manage like usually one person, but at max like 3
Three.
people.
So
Yeah.
basically like an Atlanta and conversation, manager's cousin.
Oh, yes, that is actually how it just is.
yeah.
It's cool the way he like, you know. Stuff like that, like trade that was happening.
I guess like a big, if you want to like know, it's like, okay, you are like have made it and you have like big manager, like our friend Nathan works for like OPN. If you've like listened to like One Tricks Point Never. So One Tricks Point Never is like two managers. One of them is this like New York socialite lady who just like knows everyone in New York and she kind of like sucks, but since she knows everyone, it's like you want someone like that. The other dude is this guy who's just really into synths, who lives in Japan and knew like YMO when they were big in like the 80s.
Yeah.
That's like a pretty common model of having two managers on like two different places. And one is like the person who really understands your work, and the other is like the person who knows every single person on the planet and will get you work.
Yeah.
But that's like if you've like made it. But if you're like starting out, just literally your responsible friend.
Just to like, not to make sure, but I'm just trying to point, you don't need a diploma to make it in the industry, right?
Correct.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I mean, you don't really need a diploma to do anything, to be honest. It's just a diploma.
Unless you're like a lawyer, a doctor, or
Yeah,
like a
actually, that's a
physicist.
good point. If you're trying to be a doctor, you definitely do need a diploma.
You will be arrested if you tried to practice law or like being a doctor without.
I only say that because
I learned that.
I'm a big cinephile, and there's a lot of directors back from the 80s and 90s, 70s. They didn't graduate high school,
Yeah,
and they're directors, but their writing is so sophisticated. And then nowadays, all these directors have diplomas, and I don't know if they have diplomas because that's something that's going to help them out.
Well,
To get into it,
I wouldn't say it's on the diploma. I would say it's more like,
maybe connections in the university.
yeah,
like that's what you're paying for when you come to SAIC, right? Or really any institution.
yeah, it's like you pay here so you have permission to fuck up and like meet people that will like help you out. It's like, what do you actually learn at, like, no offense, what do you actually learn at SAIC? Not that much.
And like, we went to Northwestern, right?
Yeah,
Like,
what did we learn at Northwestern?
What did we-
Like money laundering.
yeah, pretty much. So it's really just like, again, using these connections, like kind of to your advantage, but also like people generally are pretty giving.
Yeah.
Want to.
Don't be like a psycho. We know a lot of psychos. There's crazy people out there who cut your throat. But yeah, any other general questions?
This question, so on myself. Cause like, one of my friends, he's like into really big into fashion, keeps saying, bro, I'm not gonna go to school, but like you'll learn a thing or two actually. Like, how he said, like, you learn zero things, but you actually do learn something.
You can learn things from school, but most people choose not to. That's actually the key bit. And also, to be fair, like a lot of teachers also went into school with that mindset as well. And there's this kind of inheritance of like, this is my own personal plan, but there's like this inheritance of like new left pedagogy from like a lot of like like upper level education today, where it's like, well, I don't want to impose like my own position upon you. Everyone has so many valuable things to say. Not true. Students a lot of time do not have valuable things to say because they don't know what they want to say. And a lot of times professors just kind of assume it's like your immediate experience will kind of like is educative in itself, but that's not why people go to school. But that's just sort of like an inheritance from the 60s that people have been like kind of passed on like over and over again. It seems very shocking when you're at a school at SAIC, like a school like SAIC, and you get like a lecture. You're like, ooh, that's weird.
I'm just asking that because there are like a lot of artists that came in
Yeah,
and they dropped out.
yeah,
It's like it's known, like the school's known for like a high dropout rate.
yeah.
And I don't know if it's because of the money or because of the shit that they don't really learn that they thought they were learning.
Well, I imagine a lot of the people that drop out, like usually the reason they drop out is they get some like opportunity and they're like, I don't need to go to school. I just got this thing that fell into my lap. That's what a lot of it is. And also, yes, the tuition, it's like quite expensive.
And going, I'm sorry, in there. Okay, going back to your point, do you think you got the job at that university because of, it says Northwestern? Because Northwestern is known actually for being a very, very good school. That's why, especially for those.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like the Northwestern on my resume helped, right? Just like how SAIC will help you guys. But it really was just like right place, right time. Because the way that I got my job was purely by accident. I just like saw that someone that I met over Zoom, not even like one-on-one Zoom, like it was just like a general like panel thing, right? That I've gone to in like 2020 because I was bored and, was working at a bakery at the time. I went to that, I like connected with her over LinkedIn because she offered it to all of us. So I clicked on it. Then a year later, I was on LinkedIn, job searching. And I see that she moved from Warner Brothers to WME. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. She was like diehard Warner Brothers when I saw her a year ago. I wonder what must have changed. And so what I did was I just emailed her and was like, hey, saw that you changed jobs on LinkedIn. Like, congrats. Would love to pick your brain about why you made the switch. And then what was supposed to be a 10-minute, like, informative call or whatever turned into her offering me a job because she now worked in HR and there were like spots open. And so I would say generally just like approaching things with like curiosity will go a long way. Because I wasn't being like, hey, like, you have jobs open, right? I just wanted to talk to her and like see what was up. And I think people appreciate that a lot, especially in the entertainment industry, instead of being like, here's my work, like, please hire me, right? And again, I think it goes back to the whole, like, just being friendly and like kind and like, we're all people at the end of the day, right? I think what happens a lot in the entertainment industry is like you have these big personalities and, it can be really overwhelming for like these execs, right? To just have like people being like, please, like look at me, right? So it's a little more refreshing when people are like, hey, what's up?
With this stuff too, to bring it back to this presentation, people really respect when you treat this stuff as a job because it's like at some level, people understand that this is like kind of the distinction I like wanted to draw is like, you guys are like going to art school, you're like making art. People in like the entertainment industry at a certain level, that's not what they think they're doing. They're like, the dumbest people in the industry think that's what they're doing. It's not true. What they're doing is like a job. And they're like putting out content. And you basically have to treat yourself at a certain level. Like if you're like a grip on like a film set, you shouldn't be like, I'm making art. What you really are is like a construction worker. That's a better approximate of what you're actually doing. That's also kind of like what I wanted to distinguish. And it's like, you guys are in art, you need to like be like, you guys are like artists, and it's like, I'm making art. You can't kind of get these two things confused because, I mean, both of us went to like film school and I didn't really view myself, like what I was like learning how to do is like making art as like, maybe I'm making like entertainment or something. Maybe it's like highbrow entertainment, whatever that is. It's not art. At like a certain level. Now there's like a whole question of like, what is film's relation to art? But it's also just a matter of like, if you're working in the culture industry, you're making art, like that's like kind of like a tangentious question, but maybe the real thing is like, you have to treat what you're doing more as like a job. Like I'm doing this to make money. But a lot of times people with like big personalities go in there, like Erica said, they kind of come in the perspective, like we're making all this really important stuff. And it's like, no, we're getting money. We're making the bag.
Going to that, is there a contract when it comes to like directors?
I mean, yeah, usually.
Because like, I know that Christopher Nolan literally said, I'm not working for Warner Brothers anymore. Is it like more of a you pitch to this company and then they'll get it. Or you stay with that company for a certain amount of years and you make films with them for like 5 years.
That's like the old Hollywood model. There is still sometimes like stuff like that will happen.
Yeah, I would say now it's like directors and producers, like the big names that you know now, aren't necessarily attached to production companies and studios like that. It's more like, I guess like a way like liberating, they can kind of pick and choose what they want to do next. And like, since they've already built up that reputation for themselves, like truly they can go anywhere.
What you're describing in some ways is also illegal because in like the 20s and 30s and 40s, that's how Hollywood worked. Of like, you were basically like an in-house person. And then they got hit with like antitrust laws that broke up a lot of those like big studios where they couldn't also own movie theaters. And they like got new rules on like how they have like actor and director contracts and writer contracts. And so like,
Yeah, that's why I was asking, because there's actors that have contracts with certain like companies for like, this amount of time. Like, for example, like this Evans, he had a 10-year contract with it. He said, after this movie, I'm done. Like, I'm trying to do different roles, not just stay the same character.
that was specifically with that franchise, though,
Yeah,
wasn't it? Yeah.
That's the big distinction. Like, it wasn't just like exclusive to Disney. It was to be attached as his character particularly.
I mean, going back to that though, if you actually pay attention to the film, the characters are not the same actor. Though. They actually change the character. That's why I was confused. And then same with directors. They, like Robert Eggers, for example, he stayed with A24 for like 2 years.
Yeah, it's because he's getting like
And
a
then
good
he
deal
was
with them.
focused.
Yeah.
Just now with more.
Yeah, I mean,
You're just getting like a good deal from their funding them. Stay if who's funding you.
So basically, they're the ones reaching out to him.
Yeah, I mean, he got like a lot of clout and Northman was like a risk because I think the whole thing with that is like, we want to see if this like person in like art film world, but really smart film world, to do like a distinction that this professor at Northwestern had like this paper of like art film or smart film about like kind of the Hollywood art film or whatever. That's kind of what I view A24 as like a continuation of from like the 90s. But that was like them being like, okay, these types of films are getting success in the 2010s. Let's throw him like a big ass budget and see what happens. And it failed.
I mean, he crushed that. I don't know.
No, it made no money. It doesn't matter. No, it's not crushing it.
Does that even really matter depending on like how the box office hits, if the film is good or not?
I mean, if you're talking about like from the level of production, yeah, if you make a good film and it makes no money, it doesn't matter. It's like filmmaking is like an arm of the culture industry. I mean, film is art and you treat the objects like by themselves and you're like, this is a good film. But at this level, when you talk about like content, it's not about whether it's good or not.
yeah, it's the North. Yeah.
Because that's his highest grossing film that he's made, basically. So that's not really an issue.
Yeah,
But the
and still lost it.
parameters,
I mean, like you just said, that they pitched out to the fans. And then on top of it, that was his highest grossing film.
Yeah.
Lighthouse was crazy using it. Which was crazy too.
Yeah.
It focuses only on like modern stuff.
Yeah, the point isn't gross, it's just if it made a profit. And that movie had a massive overhead investment.
Yeah, so now because it's losing money, whoever made it, right, like will have to pay back all these investors for their losses. So even though.
Well,
it's
maybe
personal-
because Hollywood accounting is really fun.
Yeah, it's really fun. Don't become an accountant in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But
I'm
right,
not saying that.
even if it's like his personal highest grossing film, like the standard that's set is just like completely different, because I'm sure whoever backed that movie, they've made movies that have made higher profits than that, for sure.
And what you were like speaking on, it's like, well, isn't like a movie like good outside of this? It's like, that's like the point of this presentation of like, there's different margins of good between making good work and like making content, and allowing those things to slip into each other creates like problems like this very conversation. It's like, oh, I guess it's not good because it didn't make back money. In some ways that's true. If we're talking about art, I guess that doesn't make sense, does it? About how much money it made. And that's the problem.
Yeah. Which is why whenever like you know, like for instance, Uncut Gems, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
they, first of all, great movie. I loved it. I think it did pretty well at the box office when it.
I
was
think
released.
they made a profit.
I'm pretty sure they made
Yeah.
a profit, and on top of that, there's this whole like Safdie brothers, like, oh, like they're making art, right? So that narrative helped that movie to like keep making profits. So
Movie
there's this
studios
whole-
will employ that shit to
Yeah.
like make more money, being like, well, this is like an art film. And you're like, okay, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, which then introduces a whole new market of people who will go watch that movie.
Because they want to be like cultural.
Yeah.
It's funny though, like, you guys are talking about Robert Eggers, like, house and all that. The Northman trailer that I saw the other day was like, it seemed like it was trying to cover up the fact that it's probably gonna be one of those 8.4 art films instead of Peel as more of like an action movie.
Well, think about like the amount of money that went into making it. You have to attract a wider audience than like this type of like niche market created by that type of movie.
Yeah.
You have to be like, well, this isn't just like one of those types of movies. This is like a fucking action movie, and you're gonna come watch it. That's kind of like the point of the market.
Yeah.